faces and in secret places that nobody can fill. With their hands on her hips and that smile on her lips, because she knows that it kills me. Well, this soft French cream standing in that doorway like a dream. I wish she'd just leave me alone, because French cream won't soften them boots, and French kisses will not break that heart of stone. With her long hair falling and her eyes that shine like the midnight sun. Oh, she's the one. She's the one. When I first heard our guest's first two platters, I was just about knocked flat. And suddenly he was a man who really had it all. He was a voice from the very edge of town. Sometimes it was roaring with a rocking band. Sometimes it dropped to an intimate whisper. It was looking into darkness, considering contradictions, betrayals, the lies we tell to lovers, the lies governments tell to us all, the lies we tell to ourselves, the dream deferred, the dream defeated, the dream finally realized on a chilly morning, a glorious day. I'm common man through the common man, family man, showman, band leader, troubadour, songwriter, past, present, future of rock and roll. And if I had my way, if I had my way, he'd be the grand imperial nectarine of New Jersey. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bruce Springsteen. You know, in my introduction, where I attempted to bring you out on the stage here in a manner that befits the Apollo Theater.
You did.
I mentioned that, you know, when I heard your records, I thought, you know, that I'd never been to America, so I had no idea of what the place that you were singing about was like. There must have been some advantage to it being kind of somewhere like kind of obscure even to a lot of American people.
Yeah, but I think people forget that this was sort of, there were still a lot of very local scenes. And if you grew up an hour south of New York, like we did along the Jersey Shore, I mean, most of the people in my town had never been to New York City. And there was no one who came along the Jersey Shore to find talent or songwriters or bands. I mean, it just didn't happen then. This is the 60s and late 60s and early 70s. And so you were left in a bit of your own wilderness, you know, but it also created a very specific, you had a very specific group of influences and a very specific sound. And primarily, of course, Asbury Park was kind of low-rent Fort Lauderdale at the time, you know, in the 50s and 60s. And so what it was bars, you know. It was bars, cars, girls. It was the things that I ended up writing about, you know. But I lived locally most of my life. Part of the reason is it was sort of the most, quote, normal life I could find, you know. And we've stayed there, you know. We're still there, you know. I think I looked at my heroes, a lot of my heroes, the people that came before me, seemed to lose something when they lost a little sense of I hate to say the roots, because you can go any place and you can take it with you anywhere you go. It's not being necessarily being in a physical place, though that may help somewhat, you know. But it's just that sense of your own history, you know, what your initial motivations were. What the point was, what was the in the beginning, you know, I think, and so I was very, very paranoid. I think the benefit that we had coming up when we came up was you were paranoid about stardom, and that was a good thing. It didn't mean that you didn't necessarily pursue it with everything you had, but you kept a very, very, very watchful eye to protect your music, your band, your your internal life, and it was I thought it was a very healthy paranoia, because it's the nature of the business to suck those things out of you. You know, that's just the rules, you know.
I was in London when you came to play your first show in London around the time of Born to Run, and they were saying it's the future of rock and roll. I think there's so much in this. Yeah, people might not get how rich it is.
Yeah, I think the problem is when that first hits you, you sort of half agree. You go, future rock and roll. I kind of like the way that sounds. But then you go, but it also sounds like a shitload of trouble, man. But you know, it goes the way it goes.
But also, I don't think London had seen a show that was informed by the things you were talking about first. You know, the bar thing and everything from R&B. They had you on record, but they didn't know what you did live. So when Bruce came out, it was like we were seeing the Stax Volt review from 1965. It was very informed. The songs were these rich songs, but the way you presented them, it was not. There was nobody doing that.
What was it? Is the music? It was romantic, because I grew up on the great romanticism of the Drifters and the Spectre records and Benny King and that whole generation of you know, beautiful romance that was in those songs. And then we were brought up, because we played in bars night after night. You know, you had to have something that caught people immediately, and it was all. And the idea was show bands. You know, that was a huge part of the Jersey Shore, and so that was a very natural thing to absorb, you know. And also it was the music that I admired, because I used to I'd go out and see Sam and Dave, and man, that they put on a show, and all of those devices, you know, the use of dynamics, the use of the way long songs that built and built and built and built really came out of a lot of those soul reviews, and it's you know, we remain a sort of, you know, a highfalutin bar band, you know, so we still, you know, and
but the songwriting that was on those first two records that came before I saw you perform for the first time,
right,
there was a scope to some of the songs,
right,
that seemed like, when I heard them, what I dug about him so much is I thought, well, maybe this is a guy that likes the same records, lots of words, images tumbling out, and I felt like, here's a guy that spent some time listening to Astral Weeks and bringing it all back home, and all those R&B records he's talking about. And that's a great combination.
It was kind of pragmatic, as we played in bars as long as we could, but really, because we played original music and we weren't your local Jersey Shore, you know, top 40 band. It was very difficult for us to get work. You know, we worked. The way we did it was Steve and I. One night we canvassed the entire town from north to south. It was a Saturday night in the middle of the summer, and the idea was to find the emptiest, you know, dump in the whole town and try to get the guy that was running the place to hire us. And we went bar to bar to bar to bar, and Asbury was jumping in those days. The circuit was filled with cars and college kids, every bar. And we finally found one. There was a place called the Student Prince. It was run by a bricklayer from Freehold, and the place was empty. And Steve and I talked him into letting us to play for $1 at the door. you know. And we started and we played to 20 people or something. And next week we played to 30 or 40 people. And we worked our way kind of into a small little group of local hipsters who'd come down and see us. But that kind of, in the end, that kind of ran out. And I got to a place where I said, well, I got to be able to make do with just the guitar and my voice at some point. Now, I was a good guitar player, you know, accompanying myself all right. My voice was, in my first band I was in, they wouldn't let me sing at all. And so I said, well, the words better be good. The songs better be good, you know. And really that kind of set me off on the path of trying to be able to sit down with something and come up with something that was just kind of, you know, electric, just with the voice and the guitar. But yeah, I did.
And I've heard you revisit songs that you wrote in that era in recent times, and it isn't with any sense of like they're a different language. I mean, the songs I'm thinking of are things like New York City Serenade and it's on 57th Street. I mean, they're multi-parted and almost like, if I say operatic, I don't mean they're like Puccini. I mean like West Side Story. I mean, they're like a whole story going on, and it's a way you wrote for a while, and then you only recently went back to it. I mean, you know, songs like For You and Growing Up are really favorites. Tumbling words, but they're really about real experiences. They serve all that, but at some point you decide, like, less is more enduring, maybe. Less words is more enduring.
Initially, you know, I think I wrote a lot of that music. Once again, I wanted I wanted it to be lyrically just electric. I had to hit you with something, you know. So then there was initially the Dylan comparison. So after that, I said, well, maybe I'll try to sing more colloquially, the way that people speak, and I'll move back from some of the imagery, which really, looking back on it, you know, at that age, you're oversensitive to every sort of criticism.
I don't see it, you know.
And it was so early. I don't know why people thought they needed a new Dylan. The old one was still really young at the time.
Yeah.
And
and we still, and he still is.
And he's still, you know, and it's still incredible. So it's like, I don't. But it was just, you know, it was just part. Well, I think what it is he invented a language that didn't exist in popular song before, and so when you came along and you built on that language, you know, you were just immediately connected to it, and you know, part of it was flattering, and part of it was like, well, I better figure something out that, you know. So first two records, I moved back on my third record off of a lot of the wild imagery and stuff.
Well, there's one song I'd really love to just ask you just a moment about, because it is one that has a lot of fantastic images, but they're completely appropriate because the location of the song is the circus, and you have images from it, and you have a character, Billy, in the song, and you've returned to him throughout your career. You've made references, passing references. I mean, did you ever just want to run away to the circus? And did that thought ever occur to you, or just go to the town?
Circus came to Freehold. You know, Circus was a Clyde Beatty Cole Brothers circus, so it was and still, they still out. They do it every summer still, and it's an old school traveling circus. You know, they pitch the tent in your local fairgrounds, or they pitched the tent near a racetrack in Freehold, and I would go with my mother, and I think when you're a kid, the things you notice about the circus aren't the things you're meant to notice. You know, I think you notice, you know. But those are the things that are fascinating to you. You know what you're watching that right underneath it. You'd walk down the midway, but I was always interested in the little side. What's going on down the side alley back near that trailer, or what's going on? And then late at night, if you happened to end up stranded there 11:30 or midnight when after it shut down, it was sort of the province of local hoodlums at the time, you know, and it was really scary for a little boy. So those were the things that...
It was magic and dread.
Yeah, with a lot of dread, yeah.
And a little bit of illicit stuff going on. It's the fabulous stuff of songs and of dreams and of childhood dreams, and you turned it into this beautiful song, Wild Billy's Circus Story. Is there any way you could play that for us?
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
You know? That would be just... Professor Roy Benton will join me on accordion. Nils Lofgren. Nils' first record, we picture of him leaning up against a carnival tent, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
And John and I listened to it, and before we made Born to Run, I think we stole everything we could find off of it. So, all right. The machinist climbed his Ferris wheel like a breeze. The fire eaters lying in a pool of sweat, victim of the heat wave. Behind the tent, the hired hand tightens his legs. On the sword, swallows his blade. Circus town's on the short way. Well, the runway lies ahead like a great false dawn. Fat lady, big mama, messy bimbo, sits in her chair and yawns. And the man beast lies in his cage, sniffing popcorn. And the midget licks his fingers, suffers missy bimbo scorn. Circus town's been born. Whoa, in a press roll, drum a go ballerina to and fro. Carter wheeling up on that tightrope, where the cannon blast lightning flash, moving fast through the tent. Mars bent is gonna miss his fall. Oh, God save a human cannonball. In the flying Zambinis, watch Margarita do a neck twist. And the ringmaster gets a crowd to count along. 95, 96, 97. A ragged suitcase in his hands, he steals silently away from the circus grounds. And the highway's haunted by those carnival sounds. He danced like a great grease paint ghost on the wind. A man in baggy pants, a lonely face, crazy grin. Running home to some small Ohio town. Jesus sent some good women to save all the clowns. And circus boy dances like a monkey on barbed wire. And the barker romances with a junkie, she's got a flat tire. And the elephants dance real funky, and the band plays like a jungle fire. The circus town's on the live wire. The strong man Samson lifts a midget little tiny tin whip on his shoulders, and carries them on down the midway, past the kids, past the sailors, to his dimly lit trailer. And the Ferris wheel turns and turns like it ain't ever gonna stop. The circus boss leans over and whispers in the little boy's ear, "Hey, son, you wanna try the big top? All aboard, Nebraska's our next stop."
So we can't possibly go through every stage of your career, and people know so many things about you. And I mentioned seeing you on the occasion that you came to London to play Born to Run, and the next time we met, I think you really would have been forgiven for not recognizing me, because it was in 1978 in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I had gone on a shopping expedition while I was there.
Yeah.
And for reasons, I don't know why, I went to Bruce's show dressed in a 10-gallon hat red lizard skin boots and a Western shirt with horses on it.
You had a cowboy suit. You had a full cowboy suit.
Had everything but the holster and the pistol. You know,
So-
I mean, it was like, that's what it is.
It was very mad.
Yeah, but the show was just knockout because Darkness at the Edge of Town had just come out, right? So, and yeah. And you know, this is Nashville now. It's 1978, and the word had not reached Nashville that your songs were not exclusively about cars and girls. You opened with, I think, Promised Land. You did Badlands. I remember I'd heard the record, but the way they sounded live, they sound the way they sound today. They just took off.
Well, it was funny we were talking. It's like that. People, you know, if you were around at the time, you might remember when the record came out. It wasn't. It got a lot of nice reviews, but the fans were. It wasn't. People didn't take to it right away. You know, I think because it was. First of all, it's been 3 years since, since Born to Run. Yeah. So that was a long time in between records, and you read all those whatever happened to articles in the newspaper, and we finally got the record made. And it was different. But one of the reasons it was different is that there was some young English songwriter at the time who said the songs on Born to Run were too romantic, and
It wasn't me, I hope.
I can't remember his name right now, but
Was it me? It wasn't me.
I've been waiting 30 years for this moment. What do you think? Of course it was.
I don't know. I was clearly in a different relationship with the idea of romance then. But you know, really, the serious point of telling the story about Come to See It was, one, it is an amazing record. The way you played the songs live, they were like, it was like something was really coming now. There was a change of tone in your writing. And watching it, I mean, you got to remember that I was a fan of yours before I got started. So I'm taking cues like you described. You take your cues from the best people. I'm watching you play. We've made 3 records in 2.5 years, me and the Attractions.
Elvis's first 3 records were a hurricane.
We may not...
made great ones since, all of them, but those, you had the perfect storm of first 3 records going. It was just like, whoa, songwriting, it's like you're watching everybody that's out there. I mean, you're looking over your shoulder the whole time. All right, it sort of never stops. But those things were like, wow, they were.
Well, thank you.
Scary.
That's too kind.
Right.
But of course, I'm standing in the opposite direction, watching you disappear into the distance, and I'm going, if they're going to resist this change, how in the world am I going to do that?
I think at the time, like it had been a long time in between records, and we knew the record was a different kind of record. That was the idea. It was written to be tougher, and there was influence from the punk scene and your stuff, and there was a lot of tough music that came out of England in those years, and I got all those early Buzzcock records, all the Clash singles, because you couldn't get the records at the time, you had to get the singles. That stuff found its way into the subtext of Darkness on the Edge of Town, along with sort of a cinematicness that was just part of, I think, of growing up on all the Westerns or growing up on, and so the record ended up being a blend of those things in a funny way, a blend of there was an element of what you'd absorbed from John Ford Westerns. Also, you'd traveled yourself now, and we traveled through the West, and you'd seen some of it firsthand, and you've been out in it firsthand, and those things all kind of, connected for me, and when I was writing that stuff in my room. And then also wanting to be about something. I think that was important to me. I said, well, the people that I liked, sort of, they gathered their times in, and found a way to contextualize it in a language to speak about the events of the day. I said, that's what I want to do if I can do it.
there's a choice that you made after you had quite a degree of success to change your language. I mean, it's not like a theoretical thing. You just did it. It was an instinctive thing, obviously. But if Wild Billy is in some kind of carnival colors, these songs are in another kind. They're in black and white.
You know, the 3 years from, say, when you're 25 to 28, you know, those are big years in those. They take up a lot bigger percentage of your life than now. And so you change a lot. And also the position you're in. It was like I was both elated and embarrassed by like my good fortune, you know. It was like, whoa, you know. I mean, I knew you worked hard for all this stuff, and so part of Darkness was me trying to suss through a lot of those issues. And in the end, my music was always about identity, identity, identity. Who am I? Where do I belong? What, you know, what's the code I'm trying to live by? All of these things that are about all identity issues. And so Darkness on the Edge of Town was really inspired by that search for, all right, I've been through, you know, I had that first type of success, but what does that make me? You know, what does that make me now? And the only thing I knew to do was to stand very hard and connect with the few things I was sure of, which was, you know, I suppose where I'd come from and all those things. It wasn't a result of any social consciousness. Really, it was purely a matter of my own inner psychological life and search for, like, who do I want to be? Who am I going to be?
But contained within your relationship with the audience is because you become popular, and because the songs, even when they were about dark issues and they're played with such fervor, and people. They kind of feel that they're your buddy. Of course, this they said about George Bush, you know, the lesser as well. But, you know, that thing they said that he, you know, that people wanted to have a beer with him, and that was part of his appeal. And that's the weird, the weird conundrum here as a writer, because sometimes when you're writing songs and examining identity, and even when you start writing character voices, you are not portraying you, the good-hearted man. It could be a conflicted man. It can be the conflict in it, and there's a real balance to be struck between a showman and artist in this moment.
I think, you know, theater is drama. I think you know, songwriters, filmmakers you're drawn to conflict. It's one of the things that people go to music for, I think, and any kind of art for is like, hey, we're all conflicted inside. So how do you begin to contextualize some of that conflict? How do you make sense out of it? How do you build something out of it instead of letting it destroy you? You know, how do you make something out of it? And I know when I moved into Darkness, I was interested in a few things. One was adulthood. I didn't feel particularly young at 27 or 28 years old, you know. I had gotten into country music, and I'd begun to get into some Woody Guthrie, and I wanted my songs. I said, I want to write something I can sing when I'm the ripe old age of 40, please, you know, and that will feel real and connected to me, you know. And I remember very consciously thinking about that at the time. So I wanted to move into adult issues. And then the second thing you're doing is you're playing with a certain level of ferocity for your own, you know, your own survival, you know. And for one reason, I've always believed rock and roll musicians, the greatest rock and roll musicians are desperate men. You know, it's like you've got to have something bothering you all the time. Yeah,
you can't always be a nice guy in the song, is what it is.
You know, why songs are good is because it's like in art and in love. It's like, hey, 1 and 1 makes 3. I say 1 and 1. It does in music. If it makes 2, you failed, my friends. You know, if you're painting and all you got is the paint and the canvas, you failed. If all you got your notes and you failed. You've got to find that third thing that you don't completely understand, but that is truly coming up from inside of you. And you can put it in you can set it any place. You can choose any type of character, but if you don't reach down and touch that thing, then you're just not going to have anything to say, and it's not going to feel like it has life and breath in it. You're not going to create something real, and it's not going to feel authentic, you know. So I worked hard on those things.
Yes, indeed.